Welcome, everyone. This is the Shooting It Straight podcast with Justin Jackson. I am producer John. We are sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and by Congruity HR. We're really excited to be with you tonight to talk about the Tar Heels coming off of a win on Saturday. UNC is still 3-5 in their last 8 games, though, so it's a balancing act there. Thinking about that win on Saturday over Syracuse versus where UNC is at this point in the season. And there are just 6 games left. Somehow the season went by just like that. 6 games left for the Tar Heels. And that's the title of the show tonight. 6 games, 1 goal. The Tar Heels have a goal of making the NCAA tournament. And in each of those 6 games, they're going to need to play really, really well. Might need to go 6-0 to make the NCAA tournament. Maybe 5-1, depending on where that one loss is. Still a lot of basketball left to be played. We appreciate everyone joining us here tonight. Thanks to our loyal listeners, Sean, Melinda, Jean, Bart, everyone who's in the chat supporting us, watching live here on YouTube. We're live every single Monday night. Be sure to throw a question in the chat as well for Justin. We're going to do some questions from listeners from Twitter and from the chat here on YouTube throughout the show. Justin, as you were watching that game on Saturday, UNC's win over Syracuse, what were some of your biggest takeaways?
Well, they did, first and foremost, obviously, hope everybody's doing good. But North Carolina did exactly what you have to do against a Syracuse team, right? The zone isn't necessarily the way that it used to be with the Boeheim coach teams, but it's still tough to go against a zone for, the majority of a game. And so to see them be able to knock down 13 threes and to shoot the percentage that they shot was exactly what you have to do against a team like that that's trying to zone you up, make you shoot outside shots. But at the same time, I think they did a good job of getting the ball into the middle and then just opening up everything else for them. So I loved kind of some of the adjustments they made, whether it was putting Elliot in the middle, having him kind of be the guy to, if he gets it now, he's making the decisions from that middle position. And then defensively, I think they made it pretty difficult for Syracuse on the defensive end as well. I think guys like Seth and RJ and Elliott and those guys, I think they made it difficult on those guys like, Starling. He kind of got it going towards the end of the game, but for the majority of the game, he was struggling because of the defense. And, obviously we talk about the limitations inside. Lampkin had a really good game, but that's not necessarily one that you sit and you say, well, that's something we haven't necessarily seen when they play a legit big. But at the same time, they were able to deal with everything else. Okay, you get your points, and we'll take care of everything else. So I was, I liked the way that everything just kind of seemed like it was a rhythm. It seemed like the team was. This was one of the first games I've seen in a while where they seemed like they were one and they were all moving, whether it was defensively, offensively against that zone or whatever it was. Everybody just kind of seemed like they were moving as one, and that's what you have to see going down the stretch for sure.
Absolutely. Another thing that stood out to me, everything looks better when the ball goes in the basket. That's something that Roy Williams liked to say often to the media. I don't know if he said that to you on the team as well, Justin. Did he mix that quote in when he was talking to you guys?
He definitely in film. That's always. I think that's. I don't want to take it anything that was maybe original with Coach Williams, but I
Hmm.
think that's kind of every coach's mindset. It's really easy whenever the ball is going in the rim.
Hmm.
It can cover up, a lot of things that, if you're not making shots, it could be an issue. So yeah, he would mix it every once in a while.
He said it to a lot to us when we were there covering the team back in the day. So I bring that up because UNC is 5-1 this season when they make 10 or more three-pointers. The only loss was an overtime loss to Michigan State at the beginning of the season when they made 11 threes. So UNC shot the ball pretty well on Saturday. They were 13 of 28 from the three-point line. Some of that, though, was who was on the court and who really played well on Saturday. And specifically, I'm talking about Jae'Lyn Withers. He had a really strong performance. He did well in the middle of the zone with his height and athleticism, being able to shoot over some of the Syracuse defenders. And then from three-point land, he did a really good job knocking down some of his shots. He was 3 of 4 from the three-point line. A couple other players who contributed to the strong three-point shooting, but let's start with Jae'Lyn Withers. He was the kind of the headline after the game. Justin, what did you see specifically from Jae'Lyn Withers, and how can he carry that forward the rest of the season?
I just liked how he just let things come to him. There was never, I wouldn't say that there was a time whenever I would watch him shoot a shot and it was bad timing, one pass shot or, not good spacing or whatever you might consider not a good shot. Everything just kind of seemed like he let it come to him, right? And then he was aggressive whenever he got his opportunities. And that's for me when I watch, as a player, I want every player to be that way, right? Like whether you're RJ or you're a guy like Withers whose minutes have been up and down, when you get that opportunity, be aggressive, whatever that looks like, whether that's making a play for yourself, shooting a shot for yourself, or making a play for somebody else, be aggressive. And so that's what I love to see from Jae'Lyn. I mean, I also like to see him getting up, I think he had 6 rebounds, so he got on the glass a little bit. I mean, for Withers, I mean, he's got everything that you need, right? He's got the length, he's got the athleticism, he's got the ability to be versatile on both ends of the floor. Like you said, he was on the perimeter, he was also in the middle against that zone. Defensively, he can guard, he can switch basically 1 through 5 a lot of times. So he's got everything you want. It's just a matter of just being consistent with it, right? And once again, his minutes have been up and down, so some of that isn't necessarily on him. But when he gets in there, be aggressive, do what you're supposed to do, be where you're supposed to be, make the decisions that you're supposed to make. And you have a game like this. So shout out to him for sure. I mean, unbelievable game for him. I mean, if it wasn't for him, I don't know if North Carolina necessarily pulls this game out. So shout out to him for sure with the way he played, confidence wise, and heck, he still only played 24 minutes, right? So it's not like he played 35 um, or the whole game, So for him to still come in and, it was really from the jump for him to be aggressive the way he was and play the way that he did. Huge shout out to Withers.
I'll add in one more word there, toughness. I think, if you look at the post-game interview that he did, you can go to the Inside Carolina YouTube or Instagram page and see he kind of had something messed up with his eye there. I think he got poked in the eye by Cade Tyson or practice at something. He battled through that. He showed toughness by being out there and then by getting to the rim, aggressively finishing through contact. Just overall, really impressed with what I saw from him. The counterpoint, if you will, the Jae'Lyn Withers haters might say, what about that turnover there at the end? Yes, that was a bad turnover. We've talked about that with Jay Whit all season long. The benefits, in my opinion, the benefits that he brings to the court, his shooting, his athleticism, his toughness, his rebounding, outweigh some of those negatives. And part of that is coaching too, to coach those negatives out of him, whether that's shot selection, taking threes above the break versus taking, one more pass and swinging it out and focusing on those corner threes that he's really good on shooting. Um, and one more thing I'll say about him as well, if he was a perfect player, right? If he was didn't make any mistakes, was an even better shooter, he would be in the NBA because he has the experience and he has the size. So he is just going to be, a flawed player. With all those flaws, you can get still a lot of really good performances out of him. So I was excited to see him get a lot of minutes on Saturday, and I think he has an opportunity to continue to build on that throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, and I think too to kind of back that up. I mean, I don't obviously don't want to talk about negatives because of how well he really did play, but you even go back to last year in that what I think it was the Alabama game, one of his shots towards the end of the game. For me with Withers, it's just a matter of timing, right? And is it a good shot? Is it the correct time to shoot the shot? Can I be aggressive getting to the rim because of my athleticism at times, or is it just a good catch and shoot opportunity, right? For Withers, when I watch him, that's all it really is for me. Is hey, look, if that ball swings around the perimeter, gets to the middle, kicked out to you, shoot that thing with confidence, right? But if it's and this kind of goes with it for everybody, but if it's a one pass shot, or it's a shot that doesn't necessarily have any sort of advantage for this North Carolina team on offense, and that's whenever it's like, I think you can have your certain times when you're like, okay, Weathers, let's kind of pump the brakes. But that's what I love to see against Syracuse. He was taking it whenever he was open, when it was a good opportunity, when they had an advantage, and you know, obviously we see the results, and that's why a big reason why North Carolina won the game.
Another huge reason why North Carolina won was the play of Ian Jackson, a real bounce back performance from him. A couple of stats there. Jackson had averaged 7.4 points in his previous 7 games. He scored 16 in the first half, the most he had scored in a half since he had 16 in the first half against NC State earlier this season. That's relevant with the games that UNC has on the schedule this week. But yeah, I think UNC really tried to get Jackson the ball throughout the game early on, feed him. At different points in the last few games, I've kind of been wondering, has it been the defense loading up on Jackson, or also maybe has UNC gone away from him a little bit offensively? And they answered that by really getting him the ball, allowing him to find some really good, clean looks in the first half. Really impressive game from Ian Jackson. Justin, what did you see from Ian on Saturday? And kind of the same question there. How can he use that performance to build in these final 6 games?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about Ian, and I mean, at the end of the day, an unbelievable freshman year that he's had so far. I mean, you talk about the last few games. Yeah, he struggled, and teams have keyed in way more on him. But then you have a game against Syracuse where they play zone. It's easy to kind of lose guys, and he's able just to kind of roam and knock down shots whenever he's open. I mean, shooting 10 threes, that's pretty evident of how he was able just to step into shots and shoot them with confidence. So I've said all season long that Ian is one of the best offensive players as far as putting the ball in the basket that I've seen in a long time come through North Carolina, right? I mean, I just, you think about guys like Kobe White, you think about guys like Cole Anthony when he was here, right? Like you think of guys like that, and then Ian for me is right there, right? So scoring the ball wise is never an issue for me. Yeah, it has. Does he have to score the ball for this team to be as successful as they can be? I think, in my opinion, I think he does. But for me, it's okay. How do you affect the game in other ways, right? Like, and you saw he got a steal in the first half, got out in transition, got a dunk, right? He had a block. He, defensively, he seemed like he was more engaged, right? So for me, I mean, scoring 23 points, yes, unbelievable game, Ian. Way to shoot it, 5 for 10 from three, 8 for 15 overall. Maybe work on the free throws a little bit, 2 for 6 from the free throw line. But it's just how do you affect the game in other ways, because that's only going to help this team and it's only going to help him going forward as an individual player trying to make it to the highest level. So, definitely good to kind of see that engagement on the other side and just in other areas of the game for Ian.
We've talked about Ian. We've talked about Jay Whit. We're kind of putting together the pieces of a question that I've wanted to ask you tonight, Justin. We've talked about the best five for UNC a lot this season. Still in the process of finding what that best five looks like. Are the 4 guards out there together? Is that the best 5 lineup? Here's a lineup, and I'll give you the advanced metric on it as well, because this one it ranks out quite well from the Evan Maya advanced metrics perspective. RJ, Ian, Seth, Jay Witt, and Jay Wash. You get a little bit of defense there with Seth and Jay Witt, the athleticism. You get a lot of scoring with the 2 guards, RJ and Ian. Some of this, of course, will be situational and matchups. We've seen them switch out VAL for Jae'Lyn Washington at points, depending on the size of the opposing team's big and things like that. Um, but how do you feel about that lineup specifically? And do you think maybe that lineup could be a catalyst as the rest of the season goes on? Maybe if it's not that specific lineup, maybe trying to play a little bit bigger, maybe getting someone in there at the 4 spot like a Drake or a Jay Witt who has a little bit more size.
Yeah, I think it's funny with the lineup conversation because I mean I've been saying it all season. I think it's going to be a revolving door of lineups depending on matchups. You play against a Syracuse team who majority of the time they had 2 bigs mainly, and Lampkin, and then whoever else they had. They had a couple bigs they had in rotation. So yeah, you probably have to start a little bit bigger, right? You've got to start a Jay Wash or a Van Allen plus a probably a Jay Whit, right? Or if you want to still go small with the Drake. Um, but I think it's going to always be a kind of a change up depending on matchups, right? For me, when I look at just, based off of their success this year, for me, I love seeing RJ playing off the ball, but also still very involved with the ball, if that makes sense. So, what I mean by that is, okay, Elliot is, in my opinion, he's still the best playmaker on this team, right? He's the main guard that can get downhill whenever he really wants to, and attack and get into the paint to make plays for other people. So you always need somebody that can do that. So having RJ play off of that, it just opens up, more open shots from that standpoint. Now, if Elliot goes out, now RJ is the one that's handling the ball in the pick and roll, kind of in the playmaker situation. Now he can be aggressive. He can make plays for others with the gravity, like we've talked about before, that he gets from other teams. He's able to create for other people a lot more. And so with those two, I think that's kind of my ideal, 1-2. When it comes to kind of the three spot, I think that 3 through 5, I think is going to be the area that's kind of just interchangeable, right? You had Ian come off the bench in this game. You had Seth starting, right? But Ian played, a little bit more than Seth. He played a majority of the game a lot because of the way he was scoring. Seth brings such a different dynamic defensively, right? So if you're playing against, a team that has an unbelievable guard, like let's say a couple games ago, like a Clemson, right? You've got a Hunter that's, one of the best scorers in the ACC. Okay, now you need a guy that's defensively aggressive like Seth. But so I think it's just going to be different, right? Jay Wash, I think some games. I mean, heck, Jay Wash just knocked down a three, which is what I've been I've been waiting for Jay Wash to be able to knock down a three and maybe kind of see some of those go in. So it's going to be a little bit different. You play against a true big. You have a guy like Jay Wash be able to space and get the big away from the rim. Um, that's huge. But then you have maybe a guy that's the same size. Van Allen might be stronger. He can take advantage inside. Boom, put Van Allen. So I think it's gonna be a revolving door. I don't think we should ever be, settled on one lineup. I think analytics and stats might say one thing, but when I watch this team, just depending on matchup, I think it's gonna look different. So that's my opinion. For what little basketball that I know and have played, I think it's going to be a total group effort, when it comes to lineups and winning these games going down the stretch.
Yeah, and there's always a little bit of, you have to keep the human touch in there with the advanced metrics. I'll give you an example of that. Cade Tyson still ranks very highly in some of the advanced metrics. I think some of that is baking in some preseason projections, and they haven't fully worked their way out because he hasn't played a ton of minutes. So, I'm not going to be here advocating for more Cade Tyson minutes with the platform here that I have. We got some discussion there of Elliot Cadeau, and I wanted to bring in this question. JJax44 on Twitter/X. We did a Q&A tweet earlier today, and this is a question from Son of Odell. How do you maintain Elliot's hustle while trying to control him to not take so many chances diving for loose balls that result in fouls repeatedly? So asking a little bit about EC's foul troubles this year. He's gotten in foul trouble often. What's that balance look like for him so that he can still stay on the floor and make a positive impact?
Yeah, I think the two areas of improvement for Elliott are, staying out of foul trouble and turnovers, right? Um, Foul trouble, I'm a proponent. If you get a couple fouls just from being aggressive defensively, whether that's get down the passing lane or you're just up pressuring the ball and maybe they call a hand check foul, cool. I will clap my hands and I'll move on, right? But if it's a foul that's 90 feet away from the basket or it's on a some sort of loose ball or offensive rebound where you have no chance of getting it or you know just situations, basketball players know when they can get to the ball and when they can't. Just certain situations you just have to know you can't foul, right? And I think a lot of his foul trouble, when he's been in foul trouble in games, he'll have 2 fouls in the first half and he'll make a play as if he has 0 fouls, right? So there's kind of a shift whenever you get into foul trouble that I think at times maybe he just doesn't necessarily see it. Maybe he sees a ball and he wants to go get it and be aggressive. But from the foul standpoint, he's got to be able to stay on the floor, right? The turnovers, you have to live with some turnovers whenever a guy has the ball in his hand a majority of the game, right? Like you have to every once in a while, when he has a 3, 4 turnover game, I think that you have to kind of live with that. At the end of the day, it's a difficult job to be a point guard, playmaking for everybody, getting everybody in the right spots. It's not an easy job. That's why I was never a point guard, right? Like, let me just catch the ball and shoot or, do something other than trying to make a play for somebody else all the time. So from that standpoint, you got to live with it. Now, with Elliot, I think it's just a matter of not trying to make the home run play every single time, right? A lot of times with you watch a guy like Kendall Marshall, right? With point guards like that, a lot of times they see things happening way before anybody else does on the floor, right? But at the same time, you have to take into account, okay, who am I throwing this to? What is the time on the clock? What is the situation, right? Like, is the other team on a run? Should I just try to get us into something to get a good shot? Or is this a play that I should try to make, right? So I think from Elliot's perspective, it's just knowing, the time in the game, the situation, and also knowing, hey, if it just means instead of me trying to make, a cross court skip pass just to make that one pass and then he can skip it across, so be it, right? Like we don't need to have a highlight play every single time. We know you can make those kind of plays, and that's what makes him so good. But it doesn't have to be that every single time. So if he's able to clean those two areas up, for me, Elliott is one of the better passers that we've also seen come through North Carolina. So just cleaning that up, knowing time and situation, whether it's fouling or turning the ball over. If he cleans that up, I think he's able to stay on the floor a lot more. This team's offense looks different at times. They don't necessarily stall like they do at times when he's off the floor. So that's big for this team, is for him to kind of, quickly, with only 6 games left, but just kind of mature in those two areas and know, okay, hey, maybe I can go for this steal because I only have one foul, but hey, I've got two. Let me go ahead and back off a little bit.
With Elliot too, I think sometimes he feels UNC struggling offensively, and he feels like maybe I need to turn the dial up a little bit more and try to
Mm-hmm.
make something happen. And sometimes that's how you get into trouble. That's how you turn the ball over. So I think finding that dial, maybe dialing it back a little bit, um, you know, just letting the offense work versus trying to make it all happen with one pass that you try to send yourself. That's another part of his maturity, his growth. You said 6 games left. He's also a sophomore, right? So he has time left in his career to continue to improve. I also wanted to pull up this one comment because I thought it was funny. Um, this is a new name, so Chuck. Shout out to Chuck for watching tonight. Best five for UNC: Jordan, Perkins, Worthy, Doherty, and Jimmy Black. You're not wrong. Yeah, that's a great answer.
Hey,
I asked the best five for UNC, and that's probably up there.
hey, look, you can go down, and that's look going back to, and I don't want to, just hinder on the past, but going back to people questioning the legacy of North Carolina, when you have a five that you can put out there with names like that, I mean, there's not really much that you can really argue. I mean, you've got arguably the GOAT. You've got a guy in James Worthy that, in my opinion, was one of, I mean, I know he was top 50 all time, but I mean, he's one of the most underrated super Hall of Famers of all time, right? Like you've got Perkins. I mean, come on, you can go down the list. You've got T. Hands, who's in the conversation for best college basketball player of all time, right? Like, come on, guys, what are we talking about? But I appreciate that five. I'm sure we could have an argument, all day long about who's the best five to ever come through UNC, but I appreciate that.
I mean, we'll throw out there Joel, Justin, Isaiah, Theo, Kenny. I mean,
Hey,
who's
no,
guarding Jordan? Who's guarding Jordan?
yeah, I was about to say, don't put me in the conversation when you've got a guy like Michael Jordan and James Worthy out there. So, um, but yeah, we've had a bunch of greats come through here. That's for sure.
We want to take a quick second and thank and acknowledge our sponsors for this show. First, Johnny T-Shirt, the best place for Tar Heel gear. They're a Chapel Hill tradition since 1983 and 20-year partners with Inside Carolina. Visit them on Franklin Street or check out their online store. It's going to snow/ice apparently this week in North Carolina. So if you need some winter gear, if you're going to the UNC NC State game on Wednesday, go to Johnny T-Shirt, get another jacket for that one. You'll need it with how cold it's been. And Congruity, the leading provider for Tar Heel business owners, payroll, HR, and employee benefits needs. Inside Carolina listeners can get a free payroll and HR assessment by emailing Matt at Congruity. We'll be right back with more UNC basketball talk. We're here live on a Monday night talking about UNC hoops. 6 games to go in the regular season. And like the title of this show says, one goal, making the NCAA tournament, stacking wins. I was working on the title throughout the night trying to figure out something. I also was thinking about going with Just Keep Winning, which is kind of a play on the Dory from Finding Nemo. Have your kids gotten into watching the Finding Nemo stuff, Justin?
Yeah, Finding Nemo, Finding Dory. Yeah, those are. I mean, those are legendary movies. I think
Yeah,
a lot everybody knows
yeah.
those movies. But that's a great. If we had an audience of 4 to 12-year-olds, that would be a wonderful title.
Yeah.
But I like the title that we came up with: 6 games, 1 goal. I like I like that a little bit more.
Hey, that shows we're thinking on the same wavelength there. Because I was like, it might work, but I think 90% of people would be like that. That doesn't make sense. So it's all good. We are getting some really good questions in here from viewers. So I'm gonna take this next question from Caleb, another new name. So shout out Caleb for joining the stream tonight. Interesting question about something you have a lot of experience with, Justin, dealing with your final games as a Tar Heel. How much of an impact can knowing your UNC career is about to end have on your effort and level of focus late in the season? Speaking specifically about the seniors, RJ and Withers. What do you think, Justin?
I mean, if anything, it should add um, fuel to the fire, right? For a couple of different reasons. For one, it's your last go at it, right? Like this is our last chance to, and you don't, I say this, you don't, when you're there at school, I've been thinking on it a little bit, you don't think about what it's like being out of school, right? Like you don't think about like missing running out of the tunnel, right? Like I remember back when I was there, guys like T Hands, some of the older guys, Ray, guys would talk about like, hey, enjoy it because once you're done, everything's totally different. Whether you make it to the pros or not, it's totally different. And you'll just think back to all the good times you had, whether it was, on the bus or heck, even like going through campus, walking through campus, right? Like there's just some things you will never be a part of again, like you are, when you're at school. So from that perspective, if I'm, the seniors, RJ or Jay Whit, like I'm going full throttle every single day, right? Like we got to make some happen. And also it's a matter of for themselves and, bettering their chances of playing professionally. Hey, let's go ahead and put as much good tape out there as we possibly can because this is our last chance to do that. So, I'm sure that plays into it. I think that's kind of why, at times I was kind of confused or, at times RJ, when I would watch early on in the season, it kind of seemed like he wasn't fully connected. And, yeah, it's one thing to kind of be out of rhythm shooting wise, but there was just times when he didn't seem fully engaged in the last few games, like when I've watched, even the game against Clemson, he was one of the only guys that was really going hard, and things like that. So, I love to see that because at the end of the day, it's my last chance. Let's go ahead and try to make everything we possibly can. And heck, out of all the off of our last show, listening to the broadcast and kind of seeing some things, like there's still a chance that North Carolina makes the tournament, right?
Hmm.
So, like, hey, this season isn't over. Last show it was like everybody in the chat was like, "Oh man, the season's over." And heck, even from what I was understanding, it seemed like it was too, unless they won the whole ACC tournament. But according to certain people, It seems like they still have a chance. So, hey, if I'm RJ and Jay Whit and everybody else, but especially those, those guys that are seniors or upperclassmen, hey, let's try to make some shake. All right, let's make a push. Let's try to make a run at it. And all we got to do is just make it to the tournament, and then records go out the window. Now we can just go play and not have to worry about, man, we might be on the bubble. We are on the bubble. Now we can just go play.
I was definitely guilty of that a little bit last week as well. 20-point loss on the road felt season ending, but Joe Lunardi, in his latest, he does frequent bracket updates. This one came from his Twitter account. He has the first four teams out. UNC is not listed. The next four out, UNC is at the top of that list. One thing to keep an eye on with the bubble, Texas, Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, Arkansas, they're all in. And then on the other side of that bubble, SMU, North Carolina, Pitt's on the wrong side of the bubble. So it's something to watch from a conference perspective. The ACC is having a down year for sure. That's going to show up when it gets time to compare the resumes of these two teams. But yes, like you said, just stack wins, 6 games to go, see what happens. There's a lot of games left. UNC does not have the most challenging schedule of all time to close the season. Like we said, they play NC State on Wednesday, and then Saturday they play against Virginia. Quick plug, we will be live next Monday night after the Florida State game. That's a road game. That's an opportunity for a quality win there. Not a Q1 or Q2 win maybe, but definitely a quality road win. So be sure to tune in next week for that. If you're watching us here live in the chat, be sure to throw your question in for Justin. We've gotten a few good ones already. I'm going to throw out another question. We haven't seen it here yet, but it's been interesting to hear the fan base's reaction to this. Justin, I wanted to get your former players' perspective. Inside Carolina last week reported UNC is eyeing North Campus for a new basketball arena. This was reported by friend of the program, Greg Barnes, on February 13th last week. Justin, how would you feel as a former player about moving away from the Dean Dome, building a new basketball arena off campus? As someone who spent a lot of time in that gym, your jersey is in that gym. How does that make you feel?
Um, Man, I think that's I'm sure it was the same for all the guys that played in Carmichael when it moved to, the Dean Dome. But it'd be difficult for me to see not being played in the Dean Dome. I mean, there's so much history, so much. I mean, heck, there's so many banners, so many accomplishments that were made in that, on that floor. Um, so it would be difficult for me, I think, just from being a former player, and that sort of thing. I think when I kind of read now, obviously this is just my opinion, and I'm not making these decisions, right? But when I read the reasoning behind moving, I think money is a big thing. I think that something about the revenue would be way more if they were to move off campus or do that sort of thing. Um, but when I look at it, there's the chancellor mentioned something about there's no place to get a bite to eat, and there's no place to go hang out, after a game or whatever it is, and I mean that's what makes Chapel Hill so special, right? Like that's what makes it such a special place to go to a basketball game is you go to the Dean Dome, then you win, everybody goes to Franklin Street. Yeah, wait times are awful. It's super crowded, but that's what makes the entire atmosphere, right? Is Franklin Street after a game, going to, if it's a day game, going to Sutton's, going to all of those places down there, that, kind of gives you that whole entire experience. And so, if it's for that reason, I don't like it, me personally. I just don't really like it. Now maybe I'm not a true fan. I'm somebody that's goes more for, you know, the actual basketball as opposed to, just trying to hang out. Um, but, I just love the Dean Dome. Like there's just so much. You walk in there and there's a feeling of, what's the right word? Feeling of accomplishment when you walk into the Dean Dome, right? Like there's a feeling of um, just greatness, for a lack of a better word, when you walk into the Dean Dome. And so that's why I love the Dean Dome. I think we talked about it on an earlier show earlier in the season. Could there be certain renovations and things done to the outside to make it look a little more appealing? Yeah, it probably could be. But to completely move it, and then I also read that they would knock it down, and obviously for a great cause of expanding the hospital. But to think about the Dean Dome being knocked down is just crazy to me. Like I can't fathom that. But like I said, I'm not making the decisions, and if it really is that big of a money play, look, I think the first thing we need to be doing is, to all those owners that would be putting money in for that, I think we need to go ahead and put a little more money into the NIL fund, um, and let's get some big time transfers, recruits, whatever it looks like. Let's throw that money into that pot a little bit, and if we've got more left over, then all right, let's start talking about it. That's my only thought on all of that.
I appreciated everything you said there. I'm going to throw a few comments in there from Gene. The new location will be the same distance to Franklin as the current Smith Center. First of all, I'm not sure if that's true, but also it's just different. You'd be, along a main road, that MLK road, versus the distances walking through campus. You get to walk through, and I was someone who lived at Hinton James my freshman year at UNC. There was something really cool about immediately feeling like you were part of the basketball program as a freshman, because on game days, everyone would be around the stadium walking down. If you were going to the dining hall, you'd see all the fans there. That's something that's really cool. Being able to, rush Franklin is an experience that a lot of UNC students had and will continue to have, hopefully, and that's a real core memory there. This sort of change would maybe impact that. We do have to kind of, on the flip side, there are some benefits certainly as well if this does go through, because there'd be a potential to restructure the seating, perhaps get students closer to the court, which is something that I know everyone has been, in favor of pretty much, maybe except for a few people with really good seats who don't want to lose them. So there'd be some pros certainly as well. But yeah, when you mentioned that, about rushing, Franklin, that's a really core concept to what makes Carolina basketball what it is, and that would probably change. It'd be, let's all carpool to Franklin, I guess, and it'd be a little different for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, at the end of the day, whatever benefits the school and the university, then so be it. There's so much. And like I said, it was probably the same with Carmichael, right?
Hmm.
But there's just so much that has been done in the Dean Dome, right? And um, to just wipe it out and move on to something else, and create a new one, I can definitely see the positives. I can see the negatives. But who knows? I'm sure that would be. I know they're discussing it, but I mean, heck,
Hmm.
that would still be. I mean, a few years down the road anyway, so we get to enjoy basketball in Dean Dome for a little bit longer.
Yeah, and just to be clear as well, this is a report from Inside Carolina's Greg Barnes. Nothing is official, and nothing is happening anytime soon. This would be years down the road, 6, 7, 8 years down the road if it happens at all. So we'll see. I want to bring up this comment from Bart. I think it's a good one here, a good question. We talked about the NCAA tournament, but Bart's question: the guys have a long way to go to get to the NCAAs. What can the guys do to keep next game energy with likely no losses other than Duke, or no Q1 or Q2 games in the ACC? And really, how I want to take that question is, how do you continue to get up when you're not playing the strongest competition, when some of the biggest games of the season are in the rearview mirror? Because, like Bart says, every single game has to be a must win for from here on out for UNC.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what they did against Syracuse. I mean, Syracuse is what 5-10 in the ACC, kind of at the bottom, and they still came out and they did what they were supposed to on the road. Right now, you go into another game that's a rivalry game. Right, like if you can't get up for a rivalry game, then there's a lot more issues than just trying to make the NCAA tournament. Um, so you've got that. Then you go in against a Virginia team who, like you said, isn't very good, but um, you just have to continue to look at it as, hey, this is win or go home, right? Like just like we thought against Clemson that was kind of it. Like if you win many more of these games, especially with the strength of schedule not being great down the stretch, other than a team in Duke, then it is kind of in that at that point of the season. So it's just a next game mentality, right? Okay, we went in, we did what we were supposed to against a Syracuse team who was at home, right? Now we got to go out. Now we've got it kind of resembles the NC State game when I was there my junior year. You said it was snowing, it's cold. Um, so now we've got a rivalry game against NC State. We got to go in here. We got to take care of home court, and then we just go from there, right? And so I think that's just kind of how you have to do it. It's every day getting up. Every day you got to fight. There's no quit. We're just going to keep on going, right? Whether we have a great chance, whether we're on the bubble, in the bubble, whatever it is, like you never know what could happen until the season is actually over. So taking the same mentality that they had coming off of a tough loss against Clemson, going into Syracuse, take that same mentality going forward into each and every game. And I think this team can, make some things happen and maybe go on a little bit of a run.
I wanted to get this one final question in, a little bit of a different topic for us here on this show. But last night was the the NBA All-Star Game. That event has been a little bit up and down. But I was thinking about, what would a college basketball All-Star Game look like? And would you, Justin, have wanted to participate in that as a college player? So real quick, I'll give you my pitch. College basketball has a great postseason, but there needs to be maybe some other events within the calendar to get people excited about college basketball. They have the preseason tournaments, they have the ACC, SEC challenge kind of, but this could be kind of that marquee event for January or February to reintroduce people to college basketball if they've been watching football the entire fall. So maybe you bring 12 players in, 24 players in from various teams around the country. My idea, why not have it during the NBA All-Star weekend? That could be kind of an interesting idea. Have the game earlier on Sunday. And with the NIL world, you can pay the players now. You could, give them each $100,000 or something to participate. Justin, what do you think about the concept of a college basketball All-Star game?
I think it would be interesting. If we're talking about money, I'll answer your question. If we're talking about money, I'm pretty positive I would have joined in and played in it. It's funny because we were talking about this before we started. I've been thinking today about like what would that look like? Like, do you take the top 5 players from each conference, like the Power Five conferences? But then the problem is, then you're going to miss out on some pretty legit basketball players in the other, non-Power Five conferences. Do you do it like during Christmas time when there's not a ton of games going on? But at the same time, how do you choose with the All Stars? Like the All Star is like based off of fan voting, and up to that point, right? Like you have um, particular guys that you're pretty positive should be in an all-star game, right? With college, like there's certain guys that just come out of nowhere. There's certain, you know, you have so many guys that are like preseason player of the years in their conference, and then another guy ends up getting it. So it would be difficult on the selection side of things, but heck, why not? Like you said, just bring more attention to college basketball. I mean, NBA right now, like the dunk contest was, Mac McClung was unreal when it came to that weekend. But other than that, it's kind of difficult to watch when it comes to, the All Star weekend, which look, rightfully so. Like if I'm putting myself in the player's shoes, like this is my only week that I get off during the season. And, you've got me playing in a game, then you got me sitting, and then I got to play in a game. Like I'm not going to go very hard either when it comes to trying to stay healthy. But why not do something like that? Like you said, with the NIL and the money aspect of things now, I think it could shake it up and make it interesting. So Maybe we should head that up. Should we write a petition to the NCAA and say, hey, it was our idea. We trademark it. Let us get some sort of benefits from it. Maybe we need to do that, man.
Yeah, we can do like Kenny and Shaq. We can draft our teams or whatever and make it a whole big thing. It's interesting for sure how it could be done. Would you do conference all-star games? Pit conferences against each other. Lots of different ways that you could do it. Real quick, I know we have to get out of here soon, but the other marquee idea for college basketball to generate interest has been the idea of matching up conferences against each other to try to help different teams on the bubble. So put like the number one team in the SEC versus the number one team in the ACC. Some of the mid-major conferences have talked about that as well to try to help their tournament resumes. It sounds like, though, that the college coaches are a little bit scared of that. You would have some flexibility with the schedule, maybe wouldn't be able to prepare. There's challenges with the travel too. So that's another show entirely, thinking about, college basketball from a big picture level and how to get people excited in it. But I do think a college basketball all-star game would help in the NIL era because you have guys like the kids at, I believe, Rutgers or St. John's, Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, who are really
hmm
good players who aren't on the best team. So how do we
hmm
showcase them? So this could be an opportunity to do something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great idea. I mean, heck, you could even do something, and I mean, I think we're just coming up with some great ideas. I mean, you could even come up with like, teams that are on the bubble, right? Like you give like a week in there of, if you've got 12 teams that are considered on the bubble, right, with the four out, next four out, whatever, have them all play against each other, right? Like you play whoever you have in currently, but you play them against, a team that's kind of on that bubble. They play against each other one or two games, and boom, now going into the tournament that maybe this team shouldn't have been in the bubble and this team should have been, But look, at the end of the day, it's a tough. I don't really understand the selection situation and the way that the committee looks at certain teams. But that's a difficult job. So I'm not even going to sit here and act like I can come up with ideas that will work or whatever. But I don't think those are terrible ideas to think about.
It was a better idea than my other show title for tonight's episode. So you know what? I'll take that. I bat 500 with my ideas. So I will
Like,
take the win. UNC has a game on Wednesday against NC State. I am not a weatherman. I'm not a forecaster, but keep an eye out for any weather impacts to that game. You never know what could happen. Then Saturday, they play at home against Virginia. And like I said, next week, Monday, we will be live after the Florida State game. Appreciate all of the loyal listeners here in the chat joining us for the live show. Appreciate everyone who watches and listens afterward. Justin, final word to you. Any closing thoughts? Anything else that we didn't cover on tonight's show?
no, I think I'm just going to double down on what we talked about last show. And I think even if I'm not mistaken, I think the GOAT of coaching, Coach Williams, kind of echoed some of the same things that I was saying on a podcast that he just was on not too long ago, as far as the coaching situation and this team, having a tough year this year, but possibly making a run. So if you don't want to take my word for it, let's go ahead and take Roy Williams' word for it. Just from the standpoint of, hey, this season's not over until it's over, right? Like I said before, it looked a little gloomy after that Clemson game, but according to the people making the decisions, there's still a decent chance or a chance for them to make the tournament. So let's keep on supporting them. If they're putting out basketball like they put out against Syracuse, then we can watch that basketball and we can enjoy it and we can cheer these guys on. So hope obviously anybody that's in the areas with this weather, I hope y'all stay safe. Enjoy family and friends. And until next time.